There are moments in life when silence feels like the easiest choice yet. It is often the very choice that makes this world colder, more distant, and a little less just. Not everyone realizes the true power of a single voice, spoken at the right time. Sometimes, that voice doesn't just save one person, it can alter the fate of an entire community, or even shift the course of a whole generation. Have you ever wondered what would happen if everyone chose to stay silent in the face of injustice? If people averted their eyes whenever truth was twisted, or refused to share their own stories just because they were afraid of being judged, or afraid to disturb the fragile peace of the room? This video isn't just about you, it's about all of us, about every one of us living in a world where every word we speak can send out ripples far beyond ourselves. Welcome to 5 Situations Where You Should Never Be Silent, Stoic Philosophy. Here, together, we'll walk through the quiet doors of courage. From that first moment when you witness injustice, to protecting your personal boundaries, choosing truth, owning up to your mistakes, and daring to share your lived experience, you'll begin to see how every voice, no matter how small, when it is rooted in stillness, wisdom, and integrity, can be the beginning of a wave of change. Stay with me until the very end. And if, at any moment along this journey, something awakens within you, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. Because sometimes, your voice today could become the light for someone else still searching for their way out of the dark. The burden of silence. Silence is golden, but silence is golden. That saying has seeped into the minds of generations, teaching us to believe that sometimes staying quiet is the wisest way to live. In the workplace, at family gatherings, in the hallways at school, or out among the crowded streets, silence is often seen as a kind of shield, something that protects us from unnecessary emotional storms, allows us to hold on to a sliver of peace amid the chaos, and helps us keep our dignity intact when we are faced with anger or injustice. But then there are those moments, quiet, almost sacred moments, when you find yourself wondering, is silence always golden? Because sometimes the price of silence is a kind of regret that weighs more heavily than any words ever could. If you've ever watched someone be treated unfairly, a co-worker blamed for something they didn't do, a friend quietly hurting, while everyone else looks away, you'll know this feeling well. Silence is not always as gentle as it appears. Sometimes it presses down on you, heavier than any shout. Silence, all too often, doesn't come from wisdom, but from fear. The fear of being noticed, the fear of being judged, the fear of being drawn into conflict. Modern psychology calls this the bystander effect. The more people who witness something, the more likely everyone is to believe that someone else will speak up, until, in the end, nobody does. We give ourselves countless reasons to stay silent. This isn't really my business. What if I'm misunderstanding the situation? Someone else will surely say something. Yet what lingers inside us, long after the moment has passed, is not what we said, but all the times we held back our true voice, the times we chose safety over truth, comfort over courage. Stoic philosophy never advocates for absolute silence. True, the Stoics valued calmness, the ability to pause, observe, and not be swept away by every passing emotion. But stillness in Stoicism is an active thing, the creation of inner space to know yourself, to look deeply into what's happening before you react. Silence, if it becomes simply an escape from responsibility, a way to avoid speaking up against what's wrong, does not fit the Stoic way. Epictetus once reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He never said, stay silent in every situation. Instead, he calls on us to live honestly, to be brave enough to act on the values we hold dear, even if it means giving up the comfort or safety of the moment. This is where the difference becomes profound. Stillness is masterized, quiet strength to notice, to understand, and to act when the time is right. Silence, when it's just a way to disappear into the crowd, to avoid facing your own conscience, is only the shadow of fear and helplessness. Sometimes, holding your tongue is the kindest, wisest thing you can do for yourself and for others. But there will be moments too, when if you don't speak, you pay for it with your own self-respect. Ask yourself, have there been times you chose silence then carried that regret with you long after? Were there chances to stand up for what's right, to protect a friend, or simply to live in alignment with your own beliefs that you let slip by because you were afraid? Every time you choose silence, is it the stillness of strength, the retreat of fear? That answer, quiet as it may be, has the power to shape the person you become for the rest of your life. 1. From regret to courage. He who does not speak never gets heard. There isn't a single person who grows up without facing this moment, sitting in a crowded room, feeling small and invisible among 100 unfamiliar voices, and then, when something unfair happens, realizing that you've chosen to remain silent, to bury your own voice beneath the safe surface of quiet. Most of the time, silence offers a sense of peace, but there are moments when that peace leaves a scratch on the heart, a dull ache with no name, the sense that you've let slip a chance to live authentically. There's an old Western saying, "He who does not speak never gets heard." It's not meant as pressure. It's a gentle reminder that every time we dare to speak up, no matter how small or shaky our voice, we give ourselves permission to truly show up in our own story. I remember the first time in my life I had the courage to speak out during a big meeting. The overhead lights made me feel exposed, thoughts racing in my head, my voice hesitant at first. But even in the thick, stifling air, I spoke up, even if it was only a small comment. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me. My heart skipped a beat. But in that fragile, electric moment, I knew I had grown just a little more. No one clapped. There were no words of praise. It was simply that I had spoken and knew, at last, that I deserved to be heard. Some people spend their whole lives choosing silence to draw attention, not to make waves, to cling to a fragile sense of safety. But you'll come to realize, the ones who are remembered are not those who only ever sat quietly. They are the ones who, at least once, found the courage to speak their voice at the right moment, changing the atmosphere of an entire room, or standing up for something they believed in. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to speak for the sake of speaking. It teaches us to live truthfully and to speak up when it matters. The Stoic learns to observe, to listen, to prepare for that moment when a voice steady from within must finally be heard. That is a strength born of awareness, not of bravado. Ask yourself, how long has it been since you last spoke up for yourself? When was the last time your voice trembled, but you chose to tell the truth anyway? Perhaps just one small sentence is enough to change the course of your own journey and the journey of those around you. 2. Witnessing injustice. Stand up for the truth. There are days when you're just an ordinary person walking the street or sitting in an office under the pale glow of fluorescent lights, and suddenly you find yourself a witness to something unjust. Maybe it's the moment when someone vulnerable is laughed at in the middle of a crowd, a coworker is unfairly blamed in front of the boss, or a stranger stands trembling, surrounded by cold, judgmental stares. The air grows heavy, almost metallic. Everyone turns away, feigning busyness, quietly thinking to themselves, "This isn't my problem." You too, perhaps, have chosen silence, because deep down, we've all felt that fear, the fear of being noticed, the fear of standing out, the fear of the price that comes with speaking up for what is right. Sometimes, that fear is quieter than any excuse we could ever muster. Psychology calls it the bystander effect. The more witnesses there are, the more our sense of responsibility is diffused, and the easier it is for injustice to grow. You look around and see everyone else staying silent, reassuring yourself, someone else will say something, and yet no one does. It's in moments like these that you come home to yourself at the end of the day, carrying a strange, unsettled feeling you can't quite name. Not everyone is a bad person, but prolonged silence can turn even the kindest souls into unwitting accomplices to injustice. And someday, it could be you or someone you love who becomes the next victim when that day comes. The loneliness is sharper than any words of comfort. Stoic philosophy has never encouraged that kind of safety. Marcus Aurelius, a man who once held all the power in the world, chose to remain loyal to justice. He once wrote, "What's not good for the hive is not good for the bee." Whatever harms the community, in the end, harms each individual as well. Even when faced with great forces, Marcus was never afraid to defend the innocent, because he understood that protecting truth for one person is a way of safeguarding peace for everyone. Your value is not measured by how many times you avoid trouble, but by the moments you are brave enough to speak up for what is right, even if you stand alone. Some people think that to stand up for what's right, you have to be a hero, someone who does grand things, who fights the whole world. But the truth is simpler. Sometimes strength is found in a nod of empathy, a gentle word spoken during the storm, or simply a quiet message of comfort to someone hurt after a tough meeting. As long as you don't look away, as long as you don't add to the silence, you're already easing the burden of injustice in your own small corner of the world. I remember the first time I saw someone being bullied at school. Everyone else laughed, but there was one small girl standing behind me. Shyly, she tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "I think this is wrong. Should we go ask if they're okay?" That one small gesture, no shouting needed, was enough to break the chill in the air, and the laughter slowly faded. I realized then that you don't have to shout to stand up for the truth. Sometimes, just one person's voice can chase the loneliness from a crowded room. Have you ever been the one who spoke up? Or have you ever been rescued by someone's timely words? Maybe it was a comforting text, a reassuring hand on your shoulder, or simply a look of understanding when everyone else turned away. Whether you were the giver or the receiver, that moment can plant a seed of faith that somewhere in this world there are still people brave enough to stand up for justice. You don't have to be Marcus Aurelius. You don't have to carry all the world's burdens on your back. But if you find the courage to do what's right, even once, you have already changed the direction of a story. Every small action, a word, a look, a nod can be the spark that lights the way for those still waiting for someone to speak. No one may applaud you. You might feel shaky, alone. But in the end, your self-respect and your inner peace will grow, little by little. And if you ever find yourself silent again, ask yourself, when injustice knocks tomorrow, could be the small light in the darkened room. Never underestimate the power of a single voice. Remember, injustice cannot survive if everyone dares to speak even just once. And who knows, maybe it will be you who gives someone the hope to believe that, somewhere in this world, there will always be someone who chooses to stand up for the truth. 3. When personal boundaries are crossed, drawing the lines for self-respect. Some boundaries in life start out as faint lines drawn across the earth, barely noticeable at first. We set those limits for ourselves, what we are willing to accept and what we cannot allow others to cross. Yet, as we move through the world out of politeness, out of fear of offending, out of a hope for harmony, those boundaries can gradually begin to fade. Have you ever noticed that one of the most painful feelings isn't being hurt by someone else, but realizing you never had the courage to defend your own small, precious space? Maybe you're the one who always takes on extra work for your colleagues, always says yes to every request at the office, even though you know you're sacrificing your own private time or even the plans you made for your family. Maybe, in your family, you're the child who always follows your parents' wishes, the friend who always says, "It's okay, I'm fine," just to keep everyone happy. And then, each night, you find yourself sitting alone with a tiredness and emptiness only you can feel. Stoicism never encourages selfishness or isolation, but it always reminds you, true freedom only comes when you master yourself. Epictetus once said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." The boundaries you draw aren't walls to keep people out. They are the space you protect for your own solar place where your values, your feelings, and your choices are honored. Here in America, there's no shortage of stories about the go-to person, the one everyone loves, everyone relies on, the person who is always there whenever someone needs help. But behind those smiles, you'll often find the shadow of exhaustion. One day, you might miss your daughter's birthday party because you're finishing a co-worker's last-minute project. Sitting in front of a cold birthday cake, you suddenly realize boundaries aren't a luxury, they're essential for your inner peace. When your boundaries are crossed again and again, your self-respect gets worn down too. The more you stay silent, the more others assume they have the right to walk in whenever they please, taking your time, your energy, your emotions. Sometimes you end up angry with yourself, not for being too kind, but for not daring to speak up about what you need, for always keeping the peace at your own expense. But there comes a moment when you must ask yourself, if I don't protect my boundaries, who will? Stoicism teaches us speaking up is not an act of rebellion, but an affirmation that you exist, that you have a right to protect your place in this world. You can start small, a gentle shake of the head when someone asks for more help and you're already tired. A simple, "I really need some time for myself today," instead of reluctantly saying yes, or maybe just giving yourself permission to put your needs first for once, to realize that freedom and self-respect are not privileges but natural rights. I once knew a friend who spent their youth living for others. Only after losing their health did they finally learn the lesson of personal boundaries. And it was only when they found the courage to say no for the first time that they truly felt free inside. Those who really care about you will learn to respect your limits. Those who only want to use or control you will eventually drift away. How many times have you felt your privacy invaded, felt yourself overridden, or had to swallow your feelings just to keep others happy? Have you ever regretted not speaking up to defend your personal values? And if one day you found the courage to set those boundaries, did you feel that gentle freedom bloom within you? Sometimes, all it takes is drawing that line for yourself, just once, and you'll feel the world grow a little lighter. It's not just an act of self-protection, but an inspiration to everyone who has ever lost themselves for the sake of others. In the end, freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about daring to speak up for what you deserve and having the strength to hold a small, peaceful space for yourself amid the chaos of life. Fourth, when honesty is needed to protect integrity, the price of truth, but never regret. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a single sentence, just one, could change everything? A secret that no one dares mention, a clear wrong that everyone ignores out of fear of disturbing a fragile, artificial peace. There are moments when the truth stands out before your eyes. A co-worker unfairly blamed while the whole office stays silent. A leader's mistake that will hurt dozens of people, but no one dares speak up for fear of losing their position. Or maybe it's a lie within your own family, you know it. But to say it out loud means facing pain, conflict, or even the loss of someone you love. In America, we often speak of the whistleblower, the one who dares to call out wrongdoing, even knowing it may cost them their safety, their comfort, or their reputation. These people aren't fearless. On the contrary, they are afraid, but they choose truth, because to stay silent is to become part of the lie. The instinct to keep your mouth shut to keep the peace is more common than you think. Sometimes it hides beneath practical wisdom. Just let it go, it's not worth the trouble. Speaking up will only make things worse. Or, everyone already knows, what's the point of making a scene? But if you look deeper, you'll find the real roots. Fear of being cast out, fear of being different, fear of losing opportunities, advantages, or relationships you've spent years building. All of these weave together to create an invisible wall that keeps us from living truthfully. Some say that staying silent is a survival instinct. But if you spend your whole life protecting your safety, can you really call yourself free? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Stoic philosophy doesn't place truth on such a high pedestal that everyone must become harsh or unyielding. But it understands this: integrity is the foundation, the root of all human dignity. Integrity is not a gift you're born with. It is the result of the times you choose the harder path when the price of truth is loneliness, loss, or sacrificing your future. There is a famous story about Seneca, the Stoic philosopher and teacher of Emperor Nero. Seneca knew well the brutality and madness of his powerful student, but he did not choose silence to save his own life or standing at court. Seneca spoke up time and again, trying to stop the evil, knowing full well what it might cost him. When he was finally condemned and ordered to take his own life, Seneca departed with calm, leaving behind final words to his student about wisdom, courage, and kindness, that a short life, lived with honesty, is enough to fulfill one's human journey. You may never be a philosopher or a historic whistleblower, but everyone faces their own crossroads moments when you must choose between keeping silent and speaking out. Honesty doesn't mean telling every secret or exposing every flaw. It means not compromising with what is wrong, not becoming complicit in a lie, even through your silence. Sometimes truth needs to be protected with wisdom, patience, and compassion, knowing when to speak, to whom, and how, so that truth doesn't become a weapon but a light for growth and healing. There were times in my life when I chose silence, thinking it was safer, that it would keep the peace, but then the regret would grow. If only I had spoken up that day. Maybe someone wouldn't have been hurt if I'd told the truth. Or simply, if I'd been honest, maybe I wouldn't have lost faith in myself. Once, a close friend of mine in America shared her story at work. She discovered a coworker was falsifying numbers to boost their personal achievements. She knew that if she reported it, she'd lose trust, risk being shunned, or even lose her job. But in the end, she chose truth and emailed her supervisor, knowing she would lose her sense of comfort. The cost was months of loneliness, misunderstanding, but she told me, "As long as I keep my own conscience clean, I'll never regret it." Stoicism reminds us, even the smallest act of integrity creates a sanctuary inside a place where you no longer have to hide or torment yourself or become someone you're not. You might lose certain things, your position, people's affection, material benefits, but in exchange, you keep your self-respect, and that is something no one can ever take away. Have you ever paid a price for the truth? Or regretted staying silent when you should have spoken out? Remember, honesty won't make you better than others, but it will let you sleep peacefully each night with a clear conscience. Sometimes the truth is cold, but if just one person has the courage to speak it, It becomes a fire that warms those still living in the shadow of lies. Don't let silence make you a partner to what's wrong, for the price of a moment's safety can sometimes be a regret that lasts a lifetime. 5. When it's time to right your wrongs. Rising up from your own weakness. There are days when you suddenly realize what you regret most isn't that you made a mistake, but that you let that mistake quietly growth by fear, by shame, or by the silent pride that hides inside us all. In this world, no one is immune to getting lost, saying the wrong thing, making the wrong choice, or unintentionally hurting someone. But what separates those who truly grow up from those forever living in the shadow of their past is the willingness to face up to and repair what has gone astray. I once witnessed the quiet courage of a father in America, a working man, not highly educated, not one for big words, but every time he made a mistake with his child, he wasn't afraid to bow his head and apologize, then change his ways. In those moments, his child learned more than just forgiveness. They learned life's greatest lesson. No one is perfect, but anyone can grow from the stumble of their own missteps. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If anyone can prove and show to me that I think and act in error, I will gladly change it." Not everyone has the courage to say these words, especially as their status rises or as they grow older. But for the Stoic in practice, admitting mistakes is not a loss of dignity, but a step closer to inner freedom, freedom from the old self, from the illusion of infallibility we all secretly harbor. In modern history, Nelson Mandela stands as a rare example of the strength found in humility and the courage to admit fault. After decades of struggle, when he became president of South Africa, Mandela openly acknowledged the mistakes of his government, reaching out with public apologies to those harmed even when it would have been easy to shift blame or simply let the matter fade in silence. That honesty created trust, healed old wounds, and cleared the way for a united future, one where people dared to look back at the past so they could build something better together. Yet the courage to own up isn't just for grand acts on a national stage. It starts in the smallest, everyday moments. An apology when you've made someone sad, a thank you when someone helps you improve, or the simple silence of listening when someone points out your flaws. I once saw an American manager, after realizing he had unfairly distributed work, gather the team to admit his mistake, apologize, and ask for suggestions to make things right. The result wasn't a loss of respect, it was trust, multiplied because everyone knows no one is perfect. But everyone hopes for someone brave enough to model growth. On the other side, helping someone else make amends is also an art. It takes compassion not to turn your feedback into a wound, patience to walk beside them through their errors, and sensitivity to know when to remain quietly present and when to speak up gently but firmly. Stoicism teaches that every act of making things right is a small death of the old self, so a newer, humbler, wiser self can be born. No one wants to make mistakes, but only those with the courage to repair them can build relationships that are healthy and lasting, from families to communities, from the workplace to the outside world. Have you ever experienced a timely piece of advice that helped you avoid a heavy consequence? Or have you yourself ever reached out and saved someone with a gentle, honest reminder? Remember, every time you set something right, you're not just salvaging an outcome, you're rebuilding trust with others and with yourself. Because the greatest feat is not in never falling, but in rising up the right way after every stumble, so that tomorrow you can move forward both stronger and more humble as you walk through this life. 6. When your knowledge or experience can help others, passing the light forward. There are nights when you walk quietly down an empty street, feeling as if the whole world has faded away, leaving only you and the mist. Sometimes, in moments like that, A single yellow light shining from a window or a chance phrase on the radio is enough to warm your heart and guide someone lost back onto the path. In this life, none of us can ever truly measure the value of an encouraging word, a small piece of advice, or a timely, honest share. How such a simple act can rescue a soul teetering at the edge of loneliness or despair. Some people say, "I'm no expert. Who am I to give advice?" Others hesitate to speak up for fear of being misunderstood as presumptuous, or they doubt that their experiences have any real worth. But the truth is, every life is an irreplaceable treasure, and every wound that is healed, every time you rise again after failure, is a fragment of precious light that could one day illuminate the way for someone walking through the same darkness you once knew. Stoicism teaches, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. Marcus Aurelius reminds us of the unbreakable connection between each individual and the community. If you keep your knowledge, your lessons, and your hope to yourself, you may feel safe, but you'll never truly grow. The Stoic does not share wisdom for admiration or praise. They do so out of a sense of responsibility, understanding that it is each person's duty to pass on what they know, so the whole community can rise together. And so the next generation does not stumble at the very place where you once fell. Perhaps there is no more moving example than the story of Viktor Frankl. In the darkest days of humanity, suffering in the Nazi concentration camps, Frankl not only kept his own spirit alive through a fierce belief in life's meaning, but when he returned, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, a book that has saved millions of souls from the abyss of despair. He recounted not just horrors, but how even in unimaginable pain, every person can find a reason to live, a reason to hope. Viktor Frankl became a Bikona forerunner who passed down hope, courage, and a philosophy of meaning to millions who came after. Yet, in ordinary life, you don't have to be a psychologist or a hero to help someone through the darkness. Sometimes, all it takes is listening to another's story, sharing a small lesson with a smile, or offering a simple, heartfelt word. I've been there, I know how you feel, and things will get better. These quiet moments create a chain reaction of healing. The most important thing is to share with gratitude and humility, recognizing that your experience is just one small part of countless other journeys, that no one owns the whole truth, and that maybe you are simply adding one small lamp to the sea of darkness, giving someone who's drifting a little sense of direction. And remember, sometimes what others need most is not advice, but listening, a quiet presence, a look of understanding, a gentle hug. The art of helping is the balance between sharing and empathy, between offering your lessons and opening your heart to receive someone else's. Have you ever received advice at just the right moment, or heard a story that helped you get through sorrow, or simply discovered you weren't alone in your struggles? If you've ever felt that, leave a story, a message, a glimmer of light, because perhaps your small offering will become the lamp that guides someone else exactly when they need it most. And who knows, when you give away your light, you might find yourself warmed by it once again on your own journey. Perhaps, after walking this journey with me, you'll realize silence is not always peace, and speaking up does not have to mean noisy confrontation. The real power of a self-mastered soul lies in daring to raise your voice at the right moments, to defend what's right, to redraw your boundaries, to protect the truth, to admit mistakes and grow, or to pass on a hard-won lesson to someone who needs it. Every voice, no matter how small, if it comes from stillness and integrity, can change someone's life sometimes. It might even change your own. Don't let today's silence turn into a regret that lingers for years to come. Because, as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And I believe your happiness, strength, and freedom Also begin with how you choose to speak up, stay silent when it matters most. If you've ever had a moment when you dared to tell the truth, or if you still regret a silence you held, please share your story in the comments below. Your words might become the light for someone out there, or you might find your own courage and peace right here within this community. Thank you for listening, for walking alongside me, and for choosing to grow into the person you truly are. May you always find the strength to speak up for what's right, and the stillness to preserve the peace within your heart.